Are the Pittsburgh Steelers going all in this season? Times have changed in a big way in the Steel City. Consistency and stability remain hallmarks of one of the NFL's iconic franchises. However, there also seems to be a shift in the thinking behind the scenes. The Pittsburgh Steelers are part of arguably the toughest division in the league. The AFC North is loaded with contenders. A season ago, the division produced 3 playoff teams. All 4 squads finished above 500, a feat that hasn't been accomplished since 1935. The Steelers, Browns, and Ravens punched postseason tickets. Baltimore made it to the AFC title game, while Cleveland and Pittsburgh were one and done. The stage is set for another competitive chase, and likely even more so this season as the Bengals are set to have Joe Burrow return under center. Heading into the offseason, the vibe was clear across Pittsburgh. If the Steelers hope to keep pace or break away from the pack, they need a shot in the arm. Sure, the team could likely continue its mind-bending run of 500 or better seasons alive, but getting to the next level might require a different approach. The calls for that to happen have been answered in a resounding fashion. Before we take a deep dive into what has happened over an eventful offseason, take a second to like this video. Be sure to hit subscribe so you can stay on top of the happenings surrounding the Steelers and the rest of the league for the remainder of the offseason and beyond. It certainly wasn't by design, but the Steelers had 3 different signal callers under center a season ago. After the opening week starter, Kenny Pickett went down to injury. As the club approached the stretch run, the reins were handed to Mitch Trubisky. A 3-game losing streak later, Mason Rudolph got the call. The club responded and won its final 3 games, finishing at 9-8 and nabbing a wild-card spot. The postseason appearance was brief, with a 31-17 road loss to the Bills bringing the season to an end. Early in the offseason, it looked like Pickett would be returning to the starting role in 2024. However, it was also expected that he might face some competition for the gig, depending on what happened at the draft and during free agency. That's when things started to get weird in Pittsburgh. In March, the Steelers completely flipped the script to QB. Veteran Russell Wilson was inked to a 1-year deal after parting ways with the Broncos. Pittsburgh then scooped up former Bears starter Justin Fields for a conditional draft choice. Behind the scenes, reports emerged that Pickett was less than pleased with the developments. He was shipped to the Eagles for draft picks, officially bringing his brief tenure in Pittsburgh to an end. The offseason makeover of the offense didn't end there. Deontay Johnson, the second leading receiver on the team behind George Pickens, was traded to the Panthers. In advance of the preseason, the receiver depth chart read like this. Pickens is the clear number 1 receiver, with free agent signee Van Johnson penciled in as the second. Rookie Roman Wilson, the team's 3rd-round draft choice, is expected to compete for the wide receiver 3 role. Behind those 3, there's depth in role players like Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins, and Scotty Miller, but no one who leaps off the page. Najee Harris will continue to lead the way out of the backfield, with Jaylen Warren providing a change of pace. New arrival Cordarrelle Patterson could do the same. The club also beefed up the line during the draft, spending its top 2 picks on Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier. While they were a playoff team last season, there's plenty of room for the Steelers to grow on offense. The team averaged 304.3 yards per game, 25th in the league, and 17.9 points per game, which tied for 28th. Wilson's 2-year run in Denver was a disappointment, but he did manage to turn things around in year 2. He kept the team competitive while throwing for 3,070 yards and 26 TDs. The Broncos decided to go in a new direction, and Wilson is now gambling on himself with a prove-it deal in Pittsburgh. While this is a clear risk on both sides of the equation, let's not forget that this is a potential Hall of Famer who won a Super Bowl during his time with the Seahawks. Meanwhile, the team grabbed Fields for a song. The Bears threw in the towel on him after deciding Caleb Williams was a can't-miss first pick. We'll see how that works out. As for Fields, he showed plenty of flashes during his time in the Windy City, including back-to-back games with 4 passing TDs last season. The team simply wasn't competitive enough, hence the desire for a shiny new toy. While we can't say for certain that his exile from Chicago will light even more of a fire underneath him, common sense suggests that it will. This is a 25-year-old former first-round draft choice with loads of talent and something to prove. He's got a full season to learn under Wilson and could even provide a spark as needed off the bench. There are even some rumblings that he could be in the mix as a returner. Longtime Steeler fans finally remember Cordell/Stewart. He wore many hats on offense before officially settling into the starting role. Perhaps this is history repeating itself in Pittsburgh, but we'll naturally have to wait and see. While the offense was a sore spot for the Steelers last season, the defense more than did its part. The stingy unit allowed 19.1 points per game, tied for 6th best in the league. In bad news for the rest of the AFC, it may be even better this season. In the latter stages of the draft, the club focused on the defense, selecting linebacker Peyton Wilson out of NC State, defensive tackle Logan Lee from Iowa, and cornerback Ryan Watts from Texas. They join a unit that's led by TJ Watt, a potential Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He won that honor back in 2021, the same year that he tied the league record for sacks with 22.5. The defense was further bolstered with the signing of free agent linebacker Patrick Queen, formerly of the Ravens. Baltimore will certainly miss his 84 solo tackles from last season, which tied for 14th in the league. Meanwhile, Joey Porter Jr. and Minkah Fitzpatrick return to lead the way for a secondary that could give opponents fits. They'll be joined by players including Dante Jackson, who came over from Carolina as part of the Johnson trade. A bruising defense has been the standard in Pittsburgh for many moons. It's shaping up to be more of the same in 2024. The change in offense have extended to the sidelines. Matt Canada's time as offensive coordinator came to an abrupt end when the team let him go last November. Pittsburgh has hired Arthur Smith, the former Falcons head coach, to help turn things around. Mike Tomlin returns for his 18th season as head coach. Remarkably, he has never had a losing season in Pittsburgh. The club has finished at 500 or better for each of his 17 seasons at the helm. Quite simply, that's a run that's nearly unheard of in the modern-day NFL. The Steelers have been competitive for many years. Tomlin has won 10 or more games 10 times, qualified for the playoffs 11 times, won a Super Bowl, and made it to another one. Critics may knock the team's lack of rings since 2008, but there are plenty of franchises who have come nowhere near the level of consistency that the Steelers have demonstrated with Tomlin steering the ship. There were some whispers early in the offseason that he may be finally ready to move on. Nothing came of that, but perhaps that's what has inspired the team to seemingly go all in on the 2024 campaign. In preseason Super Bowl odds, the Steelers are in the top 20. That translates into middling expectations. Pittsburgh is expected to be competitive and be in the playoff hunt once again, but not being viewed as a threat to make any real noise. That could prove to be a big mistake. Will that translate into even more motivation for Tomlin and company? You'd have to imagine that it will. As evidenced by his run of 500 or better seasons, the Steelers come to play more often than not. They have two motivated QBs who should have large chips on their shoulders, a solid defense that may be even better this season, and a coach who could be looking to go out with a bang. We'll start getting some answers in Week 1 when the Steelers travel to take on the Atlanta Falcons. Yep, the same Falcons team that just parted ways with Smith, Pittsburgh's new offensive coordinator. It doesn't take much imagination to envision Smith having designs on turning Mercedes-Benz Stadium into a playground for the Steelers' offense. We'll have our popcorn ready for that one.